today is to actually hop in and customize the worksheet that I use using your own situation. And if you're at a computer today, you're going to be able to take full advantage of that and build a framework to negotiate complex work issues in 1 hour. So just drop in the chat where you're logging in from today. If you're at a computer in the airport, all right, I see Montreal joining from work. Welcome, Rohit. Good to see you. Karen in DC joining from home. Fantastic. Keep popping that in. What I'm going to do now is we're going to get to this in about 3 minutes. I'm going to give you the link to the file that we're going to work through together. So let's go ahead because we only have 29 minutes left. What we're going to do today is we're going to walk through how to customize some power phrases to help you move the needle on complex team meetings. I'm a former co-CEO of a global organization with team members that were spread across 4 continents. I know the joys of getting things done, and I know the other side of being stuck and frustrated in meetings. So today I'm going to teach you how to separate the people from the problem. Now, in one word, how would you describe the feeling right before a tough meeting? I just want to get a gauge on the pulse here. Are y'all with me on this? For those who are just joining, I'm going to give you a link. Go ahead and pop that in, pull that document up. We're going to work through that. All right, Karen says right before a meeting, you feel tight. Someone says annoyed. Absolutely. I'll tell you personally, I've had team members tell me they felt anxiety, they felt really worked up, fearful. Some people felt angry. And those are not things that's going to help us get things done at work. Thanks for sharing those comments. So, I was working with a client, and every team member, the senior leader, who's a great person, a wonderful personality, started the meeting with good intentions, but it left everyone frustrated and spinning their wheels. The agendas were always extremely vague, and I noticed a pattern. Team members would start group chats, either in Slack or in the private message section of the video meeting. Does anyone know what that's about? As a result, no one was active listening, and things moved really, really slowly. So as I'm working with the team, I introduce power phrases to them, and I'm sharing quite a few power lessons with you all today that I want you to take and put your own spin on. So when they use this power phrase, the meeting shifted because they started the meeting with today we're here to decide X. Remember the senior leader who was running meetings prior to this always started with something vague and a really loose agenda, and that was part of the problem. Now, I know you might be saying, Jacqueline, this seems basic, but you'd be surprised at how many organizations, I'm talking Fortune 500, all the way to startups, they experience the same problem. And this proven formula that I'm going to walk you through, the spreadsheet that you're opening, that's going to get you there. What I want you to pay attention to in our time together is that when you start meetings with a decision, you shift the energy from wandering or just small talk and you get right down to the nitty gritty. Now, what I'm going to show you, I have some screenshots here. This is one of my handy dandy tools. It's been through the ringer. You see the edges are bent here. I keep it in my work sleeve for my iPad. And this keeps me on track when I flow through a meeting. So go ahead and take a screenshot of this. I'm going to also send you the slide deck so you'll have it later. It's just the front and back of this note card here that I use. And I walk through the LATTE matrix, which is look, anticipate, think, talk, evaluate. Now, if you want to deep dive into LATTE, there's another lightning lesson on that. Today, I want to focus on how to solve complex work issues in 1 hour, and it takes about 1 hour, okay? So you have my secret sauce here, which is on the back of this card, and I want to hop into this power phrase instead of just giving you a lecture. I think it's easier if I walk you through this formula and you start building this out for yourself. So let me know in the chat if you've opened up the link. I see a few more people have joined. Welcome, welcome. There is a link in the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to work through this together. And let me stop sharing this screen here. I'm going to actually open the doc with you all so that we can move through this. pretty quickly. We're going to spend about 14 minutes or so on this section. And the reason why I like spending the chunk of our time together working through a spreadsheet is you can actually access this real time. All right, someone says your access to the document is denied. Anyone else having that issue? If you're at work, Roman, it might be a firewall issue. You might have to try this later at home. And I will send you the link to this spreadsheet a bit later. But anyone else having issues accessing the document? Can't open either. Okay. All right, let me pull another link. Thanks for letting me know. So we can just jump right in here. All right, let's try this one. And you all should have access. I see a few people requested access. You all have that access now. All right, so let's jump into this because I want us to be able to customize this together. All right, just confirm, Dora, I just approved your access also. Just want to confirm that everyone has access to that. All right, boom, we're done. Okay, sorry about that. Where we are. You got it? Perfect. Okay, so LATTE is 5 stages, originally designed to help negotiate salaries. It's from my book, Don't Leave Money on the Table. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a lightning lesson, there's a book, you can do that. What's really important for you all to hear here, when teams get bogged down and they're not making decisions and things fester, what starts to happen is something called the blame game. People start playing sides. This person said this person did this, nothing gets accomplished. There's some side meetings to get people to buy in. When I say this in the meeting, I want you to back me up here. And none of this is really centered around business decisions. So what you're going to see here is you're able to move through a complex work issue really quickly using these 5 steps. Look, anticipate, think, talk, evaluate. Depending on your work scenario and the problem that you're solving, you'll customize this. And that's the reason why I have the spreadsheet up today, because I want you to customize this to your situation. So let me give you a little bit of the orientation. I'm sorry, I'm speaking fast here. I'm just trying to make up some time for giving folks access. In the bottom of this spreadsheet, you have your LATTE dashboard, which is the first tab. Then you have your facilitation flow. This is part of my secret sauce for getting this done in an hour. This is a screen you want to pay attention to. Okay, it's the back side of my card is an expanded version of what you see here. So this is going to help you if you're leading the meeting to really run it fast. And then there's a metric builder, a affordable summary. So this is what you'll take and put into the email at the end of a meeting to keep everyone on the same page. And then the reflection. So that's a quick orientation of this workbook of spreadsheets. So with the first stage of LATTE, you're looking for the details. This is where you separate the people from the problem. Oftentimes, the issues that you see, they're rooted in people issues, not the business issue. So your goal in the top of the meeting is to get back to the business issue that you're solving. Now, you want to solve one problem in a meeting, okay? This is one of the things that I do really well that you can learn from and put your own spin in. In 1 hour, you're going to have one decision, one metric, and one next move, okay? That's how you get through complexity really quick. So in the principal phase of LATTE, in the look stage, frame the decisions in terms of your business goals or your business unit goals. So if you're able to copy this document, go ahead and type in what is the issue that you're solving. Fill that in B2. The next thing that you want to do, and this is a step that people often skip that I recommend you never skip. Quantify the exposure if your unresolved issue is not met by next quarter. A lot of people think this is something they can just bounce over and it doesn't matter. If you don't quantify the risk of exposure of not solving this problem right away, it's going to continue to linger on. This is how you create the level of urgency, and you want to tie this to operational costs or financial costs. Now, Again, the reason why people skip this, they may need to communicate with someone else to get the appropriate level of data, and they might not think that this is as important as it is. But this is one of the primary things that you're going to need to pay attention to. The other thing is make sure that your conversation that you're moving through in that 1 hour, that it's grounded in facts. So pull up the data prior to the meeting. If you're not leveraging data, you're going to fall back into the feelings trap, okay? I feel this, I think this. You want to be able to say undeniably, this is what the data says, and this is the business decision we need to make. That's how you move out of the drama of a complex work issue, because you're reducing any noise with actual data. What are the trend lines? What is the baseline? And if someone continues to push back, which I know this happens quite a bit with teams who have built the muscle of being argumentative in a meeting, and that really slows things down, or people aren't actively listening, one of the things that you're going to have to do is build the muscle of asking a question similar to, before we go further, what does the data show? So this is one of the questions I want you to customize, this power phrase. If you have a person on your team or you work with them frequently, they can be an external partner, okay? This doesn't have to be internal only, just FYI. If you deal with that situation, customize this power phrase in D4 to your situation and make sure you're anchoring in on data. Again, LATTE, the look stage of LATTE for this particular challenge is separating the people from the problem. And the number one way to do that is go straight to the data. Are y'all with me? Give me a number one if you understand where I'm going. Now, the other thing that you want to be aware of, because anyone can interpret data in their own way, is you want to also walk through an exercise where you're separating evidence from interpretation and unknowns. So when you do this, you're able to prevent bias and speculation and really focus on the outcome. So the power phrase that I like to use here is, let's list confirmed facts, assumptions, and gaps. This way you get it all out on the table. Everyone knows that this is our baseline. And from that, you get to continue to move the conversation forward. Again, separate the people from the problem with the data as much as you can. All right, let's see here. I see some comments in the chat. Y'all are with me. You understand. Great. So let's move on to stage number 2 of LATTE, which is anticipate. Far too many professionals leave meetings frustrated, not just at the situation or a decision that wasn't made, but they leave frustrated because you're thinking to yourself, oh, you know, in that meeting, I should have brought up this point, or I should have said that. Has anyone ever been there? Y'all let me know if you've ever walked away later that day or the next day thinking, this is what I should have said. So this is where I want you to pay attention to the power phrases. If that's you and you can relate, pay attention to the power phrases in anticipate. And I want you to be able to customize these and even build out additional power phrases for yourself. So in this E section here, I actually want you to write in your own power phrase, and you can have as many power phrases as you want. I'm going to save about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. And when you do put your questions in, send them to everyone so they see the questions. But I got a couple of questions here privately in the chat, so I'll just answer them quickly. What is a power phrase? All right, so the power phrase is your back pocket phrase that you use to move the conversation forward. Power phrases are used so that you don't get stuck in the minutia and you don't spin your wheels trying to over-explain. A lot of times when you're solving complex issues, you try to explain this and justify that, and it is a complete waste of time. You want to get straight to the point, quick, fast, and make sure that you speak with clarity so everyone understands. So your power phrase is your tool to get there. Now, the other question is, these power phrases are short. Can I expand them? Expand your power phrase to 1 or 2 sentences, but keep it clear, right? Clarity is the goal of the power phrase. So if you find that you write 2 pages with your power phrase, the number one thing I'd ask you to do is pause and say, are you emotionally charged? Are you really excited? Are you frustrated? Do you have some anxiety around that issue? Because your power phrase should not be multiple paragraphs, okay? So thanks for the questions. And again, I'm going to save 10 minutes at the end for us to deep dive into that section. So when you're in Anticipate, this is where I want you to pull out your iPad or a note card. I love note cards for mapping out these types of scenarios. And what you're going to do is map the decision and the influence tree. Okay. So typically in your organizational chart, you know who has what title and where they sit. That isn't the full story. We all know that there are secret power players in an organization that influence your decision maker. When you're walking through Anticipate and you're thinking about who decides, who advises, and who executes, this is a common step that a lot of people miss. I'm changing the color of this because I want to call attention to, you want to understand who you're influencing, who advises them, and who executes the decision so that you can speak their language. This is going to help you to get to the point faster and to really circumvent all of the drama and the backdoor office politics, okay? Now, the other piece of Anticipate that I want to draw attention to is tone. Now, when you've done all of this work and you feel really prepared, the last thing that you want to do is lose your cool. So keep your tone in the conversation analytical and stay composed. You want to respond, not to react in complex situations. And the number one way to do that is think in advance. What's going to trigger you? What's going to set you off? What do you typically get frustrated with the situation or the people? And think about what your default response will be so that you don't go off on a tangent or get frustrated and shut down. The goal here is to mitigate the problems and use data to move forward. So if you go back to step number one and you're grounding your debate or your conversation in verified data, you can link that to this phase of Anticipate, where you're preparing calibrated responses to top objections up front. Again, you're going to decrease the amount of times you walk away from a meeting thinking to yourself, I should have said this or that. Now, let's hop into stage 3 of LATTE, which is think. And there are 2 T's here, all right? In the think stage, this is where you're going to start building out some models of how to get things done. So for example, this phase is where you want to center in on turning ambiguity into informed choices with a simple grid. Now, this quick metric builder, this is where this is going to come in handy. This actual formula, it may not work for every situation, but it will get your wheels turning on how do you customize this for your work scenario. That's the 3rd tab in this workbook, just for those who are looking so you can come back to it. So run a simple scenario. If you run Scenario A, what is the practical impact? Now you're moving from being in the weeds and deciding who said this or who didn't update that team document on time. Now you're staying focused on forward thinking and solutions. Now, the thing that I want you to pay attention to, where most people skip and think, and I think this is the biggest mistake that I see any team member make. They fail to think about feasible model scenarios, okay? So they get really caught into one plan that they think is going to work well. And what they should be doing instead is having 2 to 3 options of what's going to work well. This is where you really utilize an AI tool to maximize your thinking and get outside of the box. If you have one solution that you've thought about for a really long time, you've backed it with data, and you think this is the only way we can get this done. I love anytime we say this is the only thing we can get something done, my light bulbs go off. That is a clear opportunity for me to say, okay, this is an opportunity to be creative so I don't get stuck thinking about one thing, all right? So then you would utilize an AI tool to help you think outside of the box. Whenever you're using any AI tool, the number one thing that you want to do is strip any proprietary data, right? So don't overshare if you're not using an enterprise level solution, and ask it for different scenarios for you to be able to reach your business goal. Again, now we're going back to stage 1 of look. Every stage of LATTE is a building block, all right? So those are the 2 things I want to call out on think. Let's move forward to talk. Now, There's a couple of things here that are worthy of paying attention to. I don't want you to skip these steps. One, define your problem sufficiently. We've all heard a problem well defined is a problem that's going to get solved. And the other thing that I want you to focus on here is lead with the single metric that matters most. Okay. This is where a lot of people find it challenging because they say, well, this is important as well as this. And while that may be true on the surface level, if you go down 2 or 3 levels, what is the root cause of the problem that you're solving? There is one single metric that you should be moving the needle on. So let me go back to my role as a consultant. I shared with you a story earlier of how this individual who is a new manager to a team said, in this meeting, we're going to achieve X. And that set the tone for them to have more collaborative and productive meetings. What happened there? They led with the metric that mattered most, the single metric that mattered most. From there, they were able to get people to move forward. So, your power phrase that I want you to customize now is the primary metric we will move forward with is, and again, this can be 2 or 3 sentences. If this has been an issue in your organization where you've had these complex issues in team meetings and not getting things done, you may want to prime the pump and just give this a little bit of casing. So 2 sentences max for this, but primarily you want to focus on that single metric that's going to move you forward. Now, let's hop into evaluate. With evaluate, most people only do a triage when things go absolutely right. Okay, absolutely wrong. And what you want to do instead is you want to start analyzing your meetings and your meeting notes to identify themes and reoccurring issues that might be below the surface. What I have found with complex team meetings and how to solve those quickly, the answer is often hidden in the notes, not what people are raising as the primary concern. Again, we want to go 2 or 3 levels deeper, really understanding what the root cause is. And when you're able to turn around notes in 24 hours and create that single reference source, and you summarize that and get it out to everyone, you'll start to notice where the misunderstandings are, where there's some misalignment, where people might be reacting to something that isn't based in facts. This is going to help you move the needle really quickly. All right, so I'm about to hop into Q&A. Let me stop sharing the screen. I want you all to customize that document within 24 to 48 hours. Listen, people who sit on resources like this, such a robust document, they always think they're going to come back to it later. And let me tell you, you get busy, life happens, work happens, and you don't take advantage of this resource. And I want you to take full advantage of it. So please, make a commitment to yourself and please tell me that you will utilize this within 24 to 48 hours and customize it. So very quickly, and then I'm gonna hop into Q&A and you can start putting your questions into the chat. See, some questions have come to me directly. Please put them in the chat so everyone can read them. I'm starting a 3-week course here on Maven, Speak to Influence. We're going to do 3 live sessions where I walk through this and a few other documents with you. We're building out your entire playbook so you can speak to influence for career lasting impact. There's $160 off. The course starts tomorrow. Here's the code. The QR code is there. You'll get all those details. All right. So the key takeaways that I want you all to walk away with. When you're going into a complex work meeting, set a goal of 1 decision, 1 metric, 1 next move. Instead of doing everything at once, you want to take bite-sized chunks. Use LATTE, especially look to clarify the real problem that you're solving. Separate the people from the problem and use data as your background. Now, the power phrases, they keep the conversation moving forward. They minimize side distractions. So those power phrases are phrases that I want you to jump in and customize the heck out of those. I want you to be able to put your own spin on all of those power phrases. All right, so we got a few minutes left and I want to make sure that I answer all of your questions. There's a couple of questions in the chat. I'm I'm just going to take a quick sip here as I read through these questions. And again, if you have a question and you want to come off of mute, you're free to do that as well. All right. So let's see here. First question. Um, okay, I have a team member who's really combative, and they have a friend who piles on in any meeting and everything gets derailed. How do I get complex issues solved in 1 hour? Great question. This is where I'm going to say go back to LATTE, right? Phase number one, and look, ground any debate in verified facts. So the power phrase I would use here for person number one and person number two, they're piggybacking. I know how frustrating that can be. I've been in that situation far too many times, and I found that this power phrase really works. Okay, before we go any further, what does the data show, right? And I'm looking for the most recent data. I remember having an argumentative team member who would go back to data that was 18 months old. It was completely irrelevant. So when you crystallize that, before we go further, what does the data show? It allows you to ground in fact and move forward from there, and also bring back to center the point that you're trying to solve. So use that power phrase, customize it to the personality that you see, all right, that you're working with. Let me come back here. There's one more question, and it's about proposals. I have a proposal that's stalling. I've had multiple meetings. How do I move the needle here? So if you have a proposal that's stalling, I think that is an issue where you want to go to anticipate. 9 times out of 10, in my experience, when something stalls, you're not talking to the final decision maker, or there are people who influence the decision maker that you're not aware of. Now, this can be as simple as asking who's involved in the decision making process. Typically, I see this with external clients or organizations, not so much internal, but hey, it does happen internally too. I've seen a CEO be influenced by their chief of staff, and the chief of staff was left out of that influence map. So you want to crystallize and zoom in there. Anytime a proposal stalls, look at who are the key decision makers. Are you speaking to all of them? Do you understand what their pain points are so that you can move the needle forward? That is less of a power phrase and more of an understanding of who's all influencing the decision there. All right. Let's see. All right. I see the private messages coming through. I'm going to email you all the spreadsheet afterwards. So don't worry. Within a few hours of our session today, I'll send you the spreadsheet so you can customize that. One more question here. We have 10 members on our team. I think that's part of the issue. We're not able to solve complex issues. Everyone has an opinion. How do we use this for such a large team? All right, same thing works for 10 people. Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. You have a 10-person team. This is actually going to work really well. So look, anticipate, think, talk, evaluate. Frame the decision in terms of what you're solving for the business, and make sure it's centered on data. Now, everyone has their own opinion. So this is where I would spend about 10 minutes of that meeting. Actually, I have it here. Let me just zoom in here on my note card. And this is where I said, take a screenshot of this note card here. It's my tried and true. I've had this for a while now. This is one where you want to spend 10 minutes surfacing constraints and clarifying decision and exposure. It's right here in this bottom left-hand corner on the first side of the note card, okay? So spend 10 minutes with that large team, and I would probably get up on a whiteboard and say, hey, let's spitball all the facts. This is where you can clarify that decision really quickly. Okay. And in terms of the time of how you want to walk through this, if you move to that spreadsheet, I've actually given you an agenda that you can customize, and I've broken it down using LATTE in the 10-minute marks. So you're able to get through this LATTE metrics in 10 minutes, in 10 minutes per section, with some time to spare, and you're able to do this in an hour. So go to that tab in the spreadsheet, use that as a base for your agenda, and build off of that. The one thing I want you to remember here that's on my secret sauce card that I just remembered to share with you all, ask open-ended questions. So when you're in the anticipate phase and you're building out the power phrases of what you're going to say and questions that you're going to ask, 90% of the time, you want to lean into open-ended questions, questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. That is going to be a critical piece that's really going to help you to uncover any issues that might be blocking you. All right. And this will be the last question. I know we're right at time. Thanks for hanging in there with me and going a little bit over. Karen says, is there a power phrase to bring all decision makers into a meeting, or is that an early decision goal? That's going to be an early decision goal, okay? Where you clarify decision and exposure. But Karen, in some instances, if you're thinking about the influence map and anticipate, this might be getting everyone, the right people into the meeting. Okay. So identifying who's making the decisions, who's influencing, who's advising, who executes the decision, and making sure they're actually at the meeting. Then once you're in the meeting, the power phrase that you're going to use here is going back to, in this meeting, our goal is to solve this. That's where you go back to one metric that you're going to move and one action by the end of the meeting. The other thing is you want to make sure, I see the thumbs up there. Last thing. The last thing I want to share with you is when you're walking through this step, be sure that when you leave a meeting in that evaluate stage where you're sharing your recap notes within 24 hours, who owns the decision? If the owner of the next step isn't listed, you're going to fall back into that same cycle of chaos. All right. I want to thank you all for being here with me. If I didn't answer all of your questions live, just send me a message. You all will get my email address and these slides. But I want to thank you for joining me for 30 minutes and all the best as you solve complex work issues in 1 hour using the LATTE framework. Have a good one.